Hey, what's going on? On this channel, we look at a lot of poetry and poets in process. People who are trying out different things, who are trying to figure out what poetry can and can't do, or what they can and can't do with poetry. We look at, engage with, and I've had the good fortune to engage with some people and watch them develop and adjust. Just through working with me on the channel, which has been tremendously gratifying. But what we haven't really done that much is shown folks some of the possibilities of a finished product. We do sometimes look at the prose, and I'll pull out a poet who is very well known and very accomplished, and we'll discuss or compare. But it's also important that we look at poetry as it's happening today, and look at some of the ways practicing poets today are approaching the art form, the discipline. So I'm very proud to be an editor of the Pierian, and I'm very proud that we've been able to get so many submissions and be able to select some poems that I do think do represent a degree of completion, a degree of finality that is worth us digging into a little bit. So this is our debut issue here. And we have a format where we're going to be doing about 5 poems per month, and then we'll put out a physical print issue after, 10 to 12 months of doing that. We'll have a good crop of poems to collect and put in a kind of an omnibus print edition every year. So let's start out here. If I can find my glasses, let's give that a pause. Let's start out here with our opening poem from Lilith Morgan Elliott, Write Something Nice, Love. And let's dig in here, see what she has going on. The cats say, claws retracted over the lip when he settles, fangs overlarge when he yawns. Write something warm, how sunlight filters through chlorophyll and wriggles through the window screen to fertilize the pages of the book you hold. How the world turns over in mounds and bloom behind your eyelids. Isn't this summer? Does it have to be anything more than the grass without its scratching, the heat without its cancers, the pools without their drownings? Can't you write about summer without it ever ending? I think it's just a nice conceit and rhetoric in this poem, where the apostrophize, it gives a voice to this cat character, I suppose, who is asking of the poet to reframe and write something essentially positive and an outlook that is intrinsically sunny. And as the poem does that and explores what a poem would be like that does that, it both offers us this poem and contrasts how inevitably such a thing is impossible. I think particularly the heat without its cancers, the pools without their drownings, shows us that any image that we introduce in a poem inevitably has this complexity of both bright and darker potentialities of kind of tragedy or comedy. And we can't necessarily control and those outcomes when we're given these ideas and things to work with, these mounds to work with. We have to follow them where they go. And there's probably some other ways to read this poem, but we wanted to put this poem as a kind of our first poem that we release into the world, because it's kind of has a kind of expresses a sense of duty towards the art form that's inviting, that's interesting, an interesting proposal. Let's move on to Devin Brock. He has Inheritance here. Give it a read. To do poor well, take down Granny's black skillet, its metal keen with decades of scrapple and cheek. Take its heft in your wrist, mix fistfuls of onion and greens with salt, and wilt them as the iron ticks with heat. Then take cornmeal and eggs, milk and oil, and whisk. Whisk until your batter is smooth and your will is as sturdy as Johnny cake. So I think that what's interesting about this poem, again, this poem does something that perhaps poetry used to do that has largely been abandoned, which is poetry used to teach, was didactic. There were sword fighting manuals written in poetry, and of course recipes. And this is interested in this tradition of poetry that could teach, not only because it wants to share with us this lore of the kitchen, something handed down from generation to generation, which gives us this title inheritance. It does want to share us this lore, and it wants to give us more than just a simple formula for doing something. It wants to unpack what it is that these, what kinds of experiences for the senses that this would entail when you reenact a ritual that someone has done many times before you with the same equipment. And I think the execution of this poem, its consonances, especially metal, decades, cheek. I guess it's not strict scrapple. It's just that the consonant sounds in general are very satisfying and suggest these sounds of and textures of cooking. It's very confident with its lines. Take its heft in your wrist, mix fistfuls of onion. So this type of recipe is not one where it tells you to dice and put in half an ounce or something like that. This is all done by feel, and tells us a lot about, I guess you could say it's a companion piece. It's a contrast to Lilith Morgan Elliott's piece. Devin Brock is offering us a different approach. The poetry should be rooted in our senses. Not that Elliott's poem isn't, but Brock's here is really excludes anything but firsthand knowledge. There really isn't any speculation except this very, very first sentence, or very, very first phrase, to do pour well. And, you know, I don't know. I don't want to BS you guys too much, but I feel like all of us who work in poetry, we understand there's a sacrifice involved in literature, that there's other things we could be doing with our time. We could pursue more immediate satisfactions in life. Either we could pursue more material goods, or just more outward success, or just more fun. And there is a turning in process here that needs to occur, and in this case, a reverence for the past. That's also, I think, something that was important to us with the Pierian. Okay, so I think Robin Alexander will take us in a pretty different direction here, sitting on a train as it hits someone. So let's give this one a read. At first, it's an inconvenience, turbulence in the back teeth, steel screaming for the mile it takes to stop. You ride a stampede of bison, dark shapes churning dust, a pounding of earth you can bite down on, the rattle of stones, the shudder of an engine killed, only noticed when it's gone. Hot stillness settled in place. A wasp draws yellow circles round the back of a girl's head. A spectacle case snaps shut. You pretend to read for the next hour, till the engine limps to the nearest station, beaten. You look at the ripple spreading over the field outside, the pale underbellies of the grass blades, that distant humming sea of cricket legs. Up close, the throat's pulse, the strange guilt of the heartbeat, the breath. So I think this poem it utilizes these associations and imagery to give us this sense of dislocation, and of not exactly being able of shock. And I think we wanted to have this poem in there because it shows us this method of a more discontinuous or associative style, nonetheless controlled in these lines. We can see these opening stanza here is heavily end stopped with the colon here and the comma. And the first real caesura or midline pause is with this stampede of bison, which is just this really surprising imagery there, and it evokes this I don't know, to me an inevitable sense of slaughter. How they're followed with dark shapes churning dust. I think this poem is controlled. The pacing of it's controlled, and its use of imagery succeeds because of how exacting the pacing is. All of these associations, all these sounds and images that the poem offers seem accurate to us, seem accurate to our ear. The rattle of stones. There's no reason why the poet couldn't have chosen another words beside rattle, but it seems to match with these other end lines with earth and rattle. It offers this sonic comparison of something that doesn't quite mesh, doesn't quite line up right. This poem also doesn't really moralize. It doesn't offer us any answer. It reminds me a little bit of Ezra Pound's famous Subway poem, and there seems to be some comment here about how alone we all are, and there's no ability to really heal and solve this collectively. There's no mourning that occurs. We're just expected to kind of go on with things. So there's this rift. And I feel like this leaves us open, this poem, by its how it doesn't have this impulse to solve and to fix and to smooth over and to complete in a way that is going to offer some false reassurance to the reader. Gives us the sense of, again, of dark possibility, and that literature can explore and confront uneasy ideas. All right, let's pivot to our last poet. We have two poems from Judith Janu here, and you'll see why very soon. Invitation. Come with me to Pemaquid's shore, late afternoon when the sun's lids close red and moist over the weeping ocean, streaking gray sand, leaking as if to harrow beach peas and peat, wild yarrows ghostly blossoming, and flax-colored grasses gone to seed. Come with me to inlets where foam feathers into pools we waded all our lives to enter, where winds brush the surface of what we never said, not dipping into what we wished or knew how to express, but our children's best becoming tide pools of unexpected treasure, bright starfish and flowering purple urchin. Come with me again to this teeming shore where we can leave all we asked of each other, steeped in these waters, to briny tea we drink, saying what we couldn't then, where we can stay tucked among rocks like a pair of herring gulls waiting the waves that carried your ashes away. Absolutely, just an exquisitely beautiful poem. Has these Wordsworthian passages here. of description of nature, of kind of this sense of almost like the soul returning to the landscape and being fully embodied by the things around it. This is just a poet whose power of language, power of conjuring is fully matured. There isn't really in terms of technique. I would just say this is clearly a poet who has studied nature very closely. And we can see in a lot of these poems and poets that there's specificity, that there's testimony, that there's direct witness of things that are happening. But I feel like this poem perhaps is shows a degree of mastery of detail that is going to be a very high standard for anybody approaching, the Pierian going forward. Judith Janu sets that standard in this poem. Wild yarrows, ghostly blossoming in flax-colored grasses is quite accomplished. I think that the sounds of it as well. It's a little bit of a tongue twister there. All right, let's look at the second Janu piece, Fall Song. Again, Fall Song. We as an editor, you're worried when you get a piece called Fall Song that it's not going to be able to live up to this idea. Fall Song sounds very melodramatic or sentimental, and those forces are sometimes difficult to master. So let's have a look. Vivaldi of falling leaves, violin strings, symphony of all summer has come to. Last juices leaving limbs, drawing in, leaf crackle over our vinyl 33 needle, note pressed in grooves of your goodbye. It's all one sentence, right? To the goodbye. I think if this sentence didn't end with the goodbye, it would be more difficult to get away with it. Birch leaves yellowing into brown curls, like your arms closing around me. Maples out glowing their green, saying notice, saying whoop-de-doo, saying don't waste this change. Savor what will drop. Grant cover from frost, like sheets we slept between. See this part again where Janu's poem pivots to almost direct statement. It doesn't hide its sentiment. Its proposal is stated directly. It's that's a technique of almost the commonplace. The poet knows, and we know what they're going to talk about, and because that's agreed upon, then the poem can focus on how successfully it can prosecute this goal. Don't waste this change, savor what will drop, grant cover from frost like sheets we slept between. The beaches hold on as you did at the end, your showy splendor measured in shadow, your flare too much to last, like sunflowers painted by your namesake. Nothing plain in you, not one cell, gave way without sparks from the bow. How much you passed on to our children, tender as leaf veins, coloring the world after you. I stand listening to the blinding of leaves, their commanding shiver. So again, it's a pair of elegies here for the beloved. And it's a classic function of poetry to serve as a tribute and to express these things that it seems anyone who's gone through this experience would want to write something beautiful. But of course, the challenge of trying to do that is not everyone is so equipped. Let's put it that way. But poetry is ultimately an art that looks backwards, as so many of these poems tend to do. It is an art form concerned with the past. It is an art form that wants to find a way to fix forever. But in doing that, the pain that of recognition that things can't last is heightened and attenuated. That's kind of this core lyric conundrum, which I think all these poems explore in different ways. Go ahead, give us a visit. Stop by the Pierian.org and have a read. We're up for this issue's up till the end of December, and we have loaded up with a new batch. And we would like your submissions. We would like to see your work. And if you have questions about that, questions about our submissions policy, please do visit the website and see what we're looking for. Although I can't express it any better than what these poets have already done in terms of articulating the types of work we would like to see. But certainly I'm open. Hit me up, folks. Very excited to engage with you. And thank you. Thank you to the poets. Keep them coming, folks.